Welcome back to Morning Rush. Today is the final day of the UN Climate Conference, but no final agreement on a plan to actually tackle climate change has been reached between the nearly 200 participating nations. One big sticking point here, though, is developing countries want funding for addressing climate disasters caused by wealthier nations. UN Secretary General Antonio Gutteres says it's time for the world to rise to the occasion and work out their differences.
There has been clearly, in the past times, a breakdown in trust between North and South and between developed and emerging economies. But this is no time for finger-pointing. The blame game is a recipe for mutually assured destruction. I'm here to appeal to all parties to rise to this moment and to the greatest challenge that humanity is facing.
All right, joining us now from the conference in Egypt is Seth Grae, CEO of Lightbridge Corporation, a nuclear fuel company. Seth, thank you for joining us. Happy Friday to you. So the UN Secretary General does not look pleased, obviously, that these negotiations have stalled and no agreement has been reached. Not so sure if that's necessarily a big surprise given what's happened in the past. But what have the challenges been to close a climate deal?
Right. Well, they're going into overtime. They're extending the negotiations by another day. So hopefully the differences will be made a little closer together than further apart as they're talking. The main difference, as the Secretary General was talking about, was something that people here are calling loss and damages. And they use the term reparations for damage to countries that they blame on climate change and more damage to come, such as flooding in many nations, crop loss, other harm. And on the Pakistan pavilion, it says what happens in Pakistan doesn't stay in Pakistan, implying that problems for them will blow back and be problems for us. Another major issue is whether to keep the goal of 1.5 degrees C or 2 degrees C of increase in global average temperature by 2050. Many countries want it to stay at a 1.5 degrees C goal. And the last COP ended with some controversy in Glasgow, Scotland last year over wording that almost every country had agreed to phase out fossil fuels eventually, that China and India had pushed for phase down. And that language is also in play again.
Right. So without an agreement then, in place, then what progress has really been made during this conference?
Well, I'd say that there have been individual deals. Today, the United States and Japan led a group of countries bringing public and private financing to Indonesia to mitigate some climate-caused issues. There are other individual deals like that, not a grand global deal of the hundreds of billions of dollars or more that the developing countries want the developed countries to make available to them. I'd say that at this conference, there was certainly much more of a focus on energy security as a part of national security and global security, getting off fossil fuels eventually for the purpose of weaning off relying on petro-dictators, on relying on countries that could cut you off because they don't like you or really harm your country through higher prices of fossil fuels, not just for climate reasons. Specifically in nuclear power, there's been much more talk here at this COP than any other previous COP, really all the other 26 combined. And I'd say that nuclear power has really risen as one of the ways to help make zero carbon power and also help to bring financing to other countries to deploy facilities.
So we talk about the devastating effects of climate change all the time on this show, and kind of what we're experiencing now. Without any meaningful action, though, coming out of this conference, what do countries need to do to reverse the effect of climate change? We only have a little bit of time left.
Yeah, I'd say that the individual deals seem to be making the most progress, like what Indonesia struck today with Japan and the U.S., working with allies, working with countries you're close to, and also just their own ways of seeking financing for levees, for dikes, for other things they need, working with countries that can bring financing for that, for exports from those countries, like the U.S. is looking for.
All right, Seth Grae, CEO of Lightbridge Corporation, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.